chainsaw of achievement. Coming up, rock stars. Is it ever too late to become one, even if you're now a 40-year-old accountant?
Scream for me, high voltage!
We grind a different kind of axe, making our own sustainable bog roll.
Timber!
And the undead give us a hard time as we go ghost busting.
Something very odd going on in here, and that's not a joke.
More of that later on in the programme. But first, one of the highlights of ManLab Series 1 was our groundbreaking bog roll alarm system, which sounded a massive klaxon if anyone in the car seat so much as lowered the seat when there was no paper left. And then we could send in fresh supplies using the ManLab Integrated Railway Transport Solution. And already it's happened again, you see. Will, our executive producer, is on the throne and the alarm has gone off. Unfortunately, though, this time we don't actually have any bog roll left to send him. Now, obviously, we could just go down the road to the shops and buy some more. But where's the skill in that? This is an 80-year-old willow tree, and the history of the willow tree is heavy with magic and mysticism. The ancient Japanese people of the island of Hokkaido, for example, believed that this was their ancestor tree and that the human backbone was made of willow. Elsewhere, the Aztecs prayed to the indwelling spirits of the willow tree in the belief that it would protect them from storms. We, though, are going to wipe our backsides on it. Not in its current form, though, obviously, because that would be a bit scratchy. Now, let me stress that this old willow is storm-damaged, rotten, and must be cut down anyway. So please, don't write in demanding an explanation and including a self-addressed envelope, because that would be a waste of paper. Now, we are very fortunate here because our tree is in the middle of a field, but you might have to do this in the garden of your small suburban semi. So what we're going to do is use and show you proper lumberjacking techniques to ensure that the tree falls in a designated triangle of safety, which in our case is something like that. To show you how confident we are of this, we asked Will to stand right on the edge of the danger zone, but he was otherwise engaged. A pity, he's cut out for this sort of thing. So, first step, cut off the secondary branches on the side that the tree is going to fall on. This will stop it bouncing off the ground and hitting you in the face. Right, tree felling basics. First we go to the side of the tree facing the direction in which we want it to fall, and we make a cut using the two-handed saw through the trunk like that, about 20 to 30% of its thickness. We then take the axe, and at about 45 degrees, we chop into that to create what is known as the gob cut. Then we go around to the other side of the tree to make the back cut with the two-handed saw again. Here, just above the line of the gob cut, and you will recognise from the physics you did at school that all the forces in the tree will be concentrated at the back of the gob. So as we cut through and the tree becomes ready to fall, it will crack and fall perpendicular to that line, down our triangle of safety, just missing our executive producer. So, with our heads and ears protected in case the tree suddenly explodes, Dan and I start work on the gob cut to silly music. That was a bit wasn't it, really? Note, antique saws are not glorious relics from a bygone age of oldie-worldy craftsmanship. They're just crap. Rhythm is very important in this, as it is in most things in life. If I push, instead of letting Dan pull, it will buckle in the middle, jam, or possibly snap, or you can get a sort of sine wave travelling down the saw, which will then cause it to smack Dan in the teeth. The problem with sticking to the traditional methods is that it takes about 5 hours just to make the first cut. But, on the other hand, it does mean you can break out one of the first tools devised by primitive man. the axe. I'm using it to widen up the cut we made with the saw to create our wedge-shaped gob cut. Again, this turns out to be long and exhausting, and after another hour, I've barely made a dent. That's why more enlightened man invented the petrol-driven chainsaw, demonstrated here by Darren, our off-camera tree-felling expert. I felt slightly enfeebled by my poor showing with the axe, so Dan and I continued with ye olde methods, making the back cut. I then began to suspect that with our check shirts, boots and safety hats, we were being set up for a cheap gag.
This has no relation at all to the disco scene of some parts of New York in the 1970s. But, oh, what was that?
That sounded like a big creak.
Here you go. Oh, hang on.
Go in. Go behind it.
Here we go.
Right.
Timber!
James, that way. Hold on.
Doesn't want to die. Here we go.
Stand back.
Timber!
Woo!
Sorry, tree. Here we can see some of the wood lice responsible for causing all this rot, presumably. I bet they got a bit of a shock. Ah, what we need to do is see if our executive producer survived. Oh, and he did. What a rotten bit of luck. So this tree's life as a tree is now over. It's had 80 years of being part of the scenery, looking very beautiful as well, the loveliest of trees. But we now have another role for it. Here we have everything we need to rescue Will from the Kazi, or at least once it's passed through this convenient paper mill. The sawdust from our rotten willow logs there in this bag, and also in here I have a few other things whose usefulness would appear to be exhausted but which yet may rise again as part of our bog roll. For example, I have this pair of old jeans which I've worn out. I have a pair of the director's jeans which he's stopped wearing now that he's given up rollerblading. I have some flax wool that we found lying around in the Man Lab, very useful for making paper. And finally, I have my paperback copy of my colleague Richard Hammond's really rather excellent autobiography, Volume 2, As You Do.
Along with some water, everything is going into this machine, known as a Hollander beater, which is really just an elaborate mashing device, turning all our fibres into a nice, fluffy, moist, bog roll specific pulp. So, in goes the sawdust from our freshly cut willow, followed by the jeans.
Strikes me this is an extremely good way of disposing of incriminating evidence, such as, I don't know, bogus accounts or emails that show you've been bribing the police or what have you. I mean, Inspector Clouseau himself could be on the pan and not realise that the evidence he seeks is right next to it.
The old jeans begin their surreal journey from my arse to Will's. One more ingredient is needed. It's not soft or particularly strong, but it's definitely a bit on the long side.
Rather than put Richard Hammond's oeuvre in wholesale, I thought it would be rather more dignified to make it into a series of paper boats containing some of the best bits. This is the one where he rescues his neighbour. The scissors gleamed in my hand. The taut ribbon seemed to call me forwards. I knew that all I had to do was cut one with the other, and I'd be driving home in a new 911. As a famous diarist once said, I think it may have been someone like Oscar Wilde or George Bernard Shaw. Dear Mr. Hammond, I have your book in front of me. Soon I will have it behind me.
Let us not forget that this is being done for those in peril on the Cludgy, in particular Will, back at Man Lab. This is vital bog roll production work, a reserved occupation in times of war. We're not mucking about. As the last scraps of Hammond's magnum opus slip into the slurry depths, our pulp is just about ready.
There he goes.
Now it's time for stage 2 of Operation Bogbuster. Here is our completed pulp mixture, or as it's known in the trade, the stuff. And to make the stuff into paper, we use this thing, which is the mould and the decal. Now, there's a bit of a knack to this, and I've never done it, but hang on, you drop it in, give it a slight swirl, then you cover it up, and then try and bring it up as level as possible. Give it a bit of a shake. And then you transfer it over to this rather simple device here. Place that on there. It's in a sort of evacuator. It is linked to what is really not much more than a domestic vacuum cleaner. As you see, that's sucking the water out. We press down to make sure there's a good seal around the edge. Doesn't look very good because it's a bit lumpy, but let's not worry about that. Obviously, if you were making bog roll in a big mechanised factory, you'd make a great big continuous roll of it and then cut it up. But we're making it by the artisanal method. So we're making squares of bog roll. Later we'll worry about joining it together, perforating it, cutting it to the right width, and so on. And this is the good bit. So while you're watching, this frame around the edge is called the decal. And when I lift that off, ha-ha! Look at that. And then we are now going to couch this sheet of paper. It's an old papermaker's term. It actually derives from the French word coucher, meaning presumably to lie down or even sleep. Hence the song, Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? Would you like to come and make some rustic artisanal paper with me this evening? How they've got a reputation for being great lovers is beyond me. There's a bit of a knack to this, so roll it on, give it a bit of a press, and roll it off. Ho-ho! I bet some of you do want to coucher avec moi ce soir, having seen that. It's magnificent. As each sheet is made, it joins the pile, separated by a layer of fabric for protection. Then it's on to more pressing matters, such as pressing with the press. My paper sheets are a bit bigger than the ancient press, so to distribute the pressure evenly, a sheet of wood is added, followed by these medieval timbers. I think I'm ready to begin winding. Listen to that. That's all the moisture coming out of our bog roll. Despite my legendary upper body strength, there's only so far I can go without an iron bar. Bring out the iron bar. Which is this, which simply goes in the slots and allows you to do a bit of proper, easy labour pressing. Making your own bog roll is not only ethical, it's also good for you. That feels quite nice, it's quite yogic. There you go, now this allows us even more squashing. Even Hammond's dense prose is no match for the power of pure physics, and soon all the moisture has been squeezed from the pulp like the grey juice from a big rotten lemon. Here we go then, ManLab's first paper product. Not quite finished, but getting close. Ho-ho! Is that a piece of paper? Somebody once said, I have in my hand a piece of paper. It doesn't quite promise peace in our time, but it does promise a certain amount of relief for Will when it eventually gets to him. I gather up my recycled and sustainable paper product and head back to the lab. Right. It's a bit coarse, but it'll have to do.
Oh, look at that.
It's very light, look. Oh. Will, hang on. In order to make the perforations on our bog roll, Simmy has cunningly sharpened points on a pizza cutter, which makes it a simple job to perforate along the width of the paper, cut along the length, and then stick the pieces together with slightly inelegant, but it doesn't matter really, glue stick. Let's not forget, shall we, that what we are producing here came from a tree that might otherwise have been used for nothing more than a bonfire. This may be a little bit crude, It is the most civilizing thing we have ever produced in the Man Lab, or even in society as a whole. Bog roll. Where would we be without it? You can see where we'd be without it by reference to Will, who is in fact stuck in the Kazi. And that's where we'd be, philosophically speaking, without this stuff. I reckon we're almost there. Is that good enough?
It's pretty good.
That looks sort of like a bog roll. He won't want an orange, will he?
Can't hold on much longer.
Coming through, Will.
Mr. Brown is in reception. Thanks, guys.
There you go. What could be simpler? Right, now I think I'll put a clean shirt on and then I'll reappear over there. Now, as teenagers, most of us blokes recognised that there were only really two career options open to us. On the one hand, you could get a job, but on the other hand, you could be a rock star. Now, one of these involved wearing a tie and making a cup of tea for Bob from accounts, but the other involved frolicking with your bandmates in a giant swimming pool shaped like a Fender Stratocaster, surrounded by rock chicks reclining on sunbeds made out of piles of crisp new tenors. But what none of us teenage dreamers realised back then is that it's actually really difficult to become a rock star. This is the famous zebra crossing outside the Abbey Road recording studios. And over the last 50 years, how many people have crossed here believing they are heading for stardom? It must be tens of thousands, I reckon. But how many can you name for certain? Yeah, just 4. Me too. That is a great many broken dreams, and of course a lot of wasted music. In fact, it's estimated that if all the amateur versions of Stairway to Heaven were played back to back, we would become very bored indeed. But then, as the great Paul Weller once said, to be someone must be a wonderful thing. With that in mind, we at Man Lab decided to reunite some of the ex-bands whose musical dreams died young, to give them a second shot at glory in middle age. Out of the hundreds of failed bands who sent us their demos, we've selected a precious handful and invited them here to Camden's top rock toilet for a second chance at rock and roll stardom. And this time, it won't be at their sister's 15th birthday party. But here, on stage at High Voltage, one of Britain's biggest rock festivals, sharing the bill with Slash, Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy. Our hopefuls are just motley crews of middle-aged blokes with everyday jobs. But for these bands of brothers, the dream never died. Helping me sort the Led Zeppelins from the Shed Zeppelins are indie DJ Steve Lamacq and Victoria from The Office. They've both got clear ideas about what makes a great band.
You're looking for that band who will be able to stand on a festival stage and make people turn around and watch them and feel like they're part of something.
I want to be able to look at a group and not just love their tunes, but actually quite fancy maybe some of the musicians and singers.
People in the band have to really share the same ideals and ideas, I think.
I want a nicely dressed man who I can, is fanciable.
They've just got to feel like they're comfortable together. I think that's really important.
I'm really looking forward to seeing these men.
Okay, Vic, we get it. Anyway, first band up is the Water Brats. They used to look like this. They now look like this.
We are Water Brats. Enjoy yourselves.
One of you's a drama teacher, one of you's a head of PR. next door, something in IT, one's a scientist. Is this a bit undignified now?
Yeah, but we don't mind.
I tried to do some high kicks, but I thought, oh, it's just going to look silly. And he did, yeah.
Lose marks straight away for having a Z at the end of their name, Water Brats.
Next up, an unemployed civil servant, an IT bloke, 2 designery types and a metal worker. From Buckinghamshire, Absolution.
This is called Problem Child.
That was cock rock.
Yeah, pretty good. A lot tighter than I thought it might be.
There was a very bad yeah from the lead singer at the end of the first song, which was, he obviously regretted it even before the word had finished coming out of his mouth.
We've got a picture. They were really young. But it's completely...
Third up, Love Fungus, who in true Spinal Tap fashion can't even open the door.
We're Love Fungus, and this is the first time we have actually played together for 20 years. Well, that's...
Drive away the clouds together, drive away the night. Drive away all that is bad here, drive away the spice. Drive until you can't drive no more, drive into the light. Darkness gather overhead, so head into the night.
I liked the songs actually, and you're now a national account manager in construction. I mean, you couldn't really get, forgive me for saying this, but you can get a lot further from your dream of rock and roll stardom than looking after the accounts of large building projects.
I have a Love Fungus poster that in frame. It's on my wall, and I walk past it every time. It's on my bedroom wall, and I can't say it's not a day goes by when I don't think what could have happened.
In your notes, it says there's a way of getting noticed by girls.
Well, we were 17, 18-year-olds.
Yeah,
So you'd still have quite a lot to offer, maybe a maturer woman.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, so, yeah. 21-year-olds.
What is the exact nature of your question? While we send Vic for a cold shower, 2 engineers, a drama teacher and a film editor take the stage.
Hi, Camden. We're on the Captain Pagos experience, and you're about to experience us.
Are you to some extent a parody?
Possibly.
It's like a lifetime ambition, and to get a shot at it at this stage of life, when you think it's a long gone daddy, again, it's wonderful.
So your band contains 3 Andys and 1 Scott.
Scott?
And Scott isn't here.
Yes, a couple of days ago we had one of our old rock and roll tiffs at rehearsal, and he literally stormed off.
So we are actually here witnessing a reformed band already in the process of breaking up. Is that... Finally, climbing the stairs to potential superstardom, our last bunch of ordinary blokes, also known as the Scary Men. Go, sir.
Thank you. We're the Scary Men, we're from Durham, and this one's called Beautiful Girl.
You're still my beautiful girl. Still my beautiful girl.
You're not very scary, you Scary Men, are you really?
Thanks very much.
But you're quite sort of what my mum would call nice lads. And so, we've seen all 6 of our bands, but only one can make it through to the main stage at High Voltage and play to a crowd of thousands. After careful deliberation, we call them back in to announce our final verdict. Right. Thank you very much for doing this. It's been very difficult. We think you should all reform you should all play together some more, and you will, I think, inspire other bands in garages and pubs and other bands that have split up and are full of regret and wish they could be back together to do just that. So that is a great thing and a great service you've all done. But there can only be one band that goes forwards, and that band is Love Fungus. So, Love Fungus will make the giant leap from pub to festival stage, despite a short intervening fallow period.
First time we've been in a room together for 20 years. So I think after that, anything can happen now.
Playing a festival is just going to be awesome. I'm just going to love it.
Can't even imagine what it would be like.
Just going to love it.
No idea. I don't guess we've never done a big gig in front of a lot of people, have we, really? No.
And just let everybody else hear our songs,
Which would be nice. And if we get bottled on, then great. And if we don't, and they cheer us, even better.
We've plucked just one band from the endless boulevard of broken dreams, and I'm beginning to wonder how Simon Cowell sleeps at night. What we're doing here is a good thing, of course, because we're getting people to play together again after maybe 10 or 20 years, and that can't be bad. But at the same time, it's slightly cruel because we're poking at old ghosts with a pointy stick and then running away. And then we leave every one of these bands with the most dreadful thing in the human condition, which is the contemplation of what might have been. I was in a band once. Coming up later, the band takes centre stage at High Voltage. Thankfully, they're not feeling at all nervous about it. More of all that later, but first, the findings of the latest ManLab survey, which is into your irrational fears. And from this we learn that 23% of you are scared of spiders, whilst only 3% of you are scared of dogs. Meanwhile, 26% of you are scared of other. And amongst the more irrational fears detailed here are the nuclear holocaust, vacuum cleaners, Darth Vader, and bin juice. But here is the most terrifying of all our findings. 40% of you, it seems, are scared of something that probably doesn't even exist. Ghosts. This has got to stop. This is Lim Castle in Kent, supposedly one of the most haunted places in England. I've come here to face up to the ghosts, and in doing so, learn how to overcome any irrational fear. My view on ghosts is this. I'm not prepared to dismiss them entirely. Now, I don't believe in the idea of tortured souls wandering the world, wearing the chains they forged in life and all that nonsense, but I can accept that there may be such a thing as an apparition, a recording of some very significant or emotionally charged event left in the fabric of the world that can be replayed to certain people under certain conditions. And if you look at it like that, apparitions are no more remarkable than the television you're watching now, which is naught but a magic picture show with no substance whatsoever. Being scared of phantoms is a bit like being scared of Ant and Dec. And so, with that in mind, we're proposing to spend the night at the castle, while I, along with Tom, the director, will wander the darkened corridors, testing out Britain's most popular fear reduction techniques. Lim Castle has a history that stretches all the way back to Roman times, so there should be ample opportunity to come face to face with a ghastly spectre. All we need is the right kit. This is Lim Castle's Great Hall, scene of much ribaldry and roast boars' heads over many centuries. And in here I'm going to install this very simple motion detector. It's a sort of infrared device. You put the transmitter here, and over here I put the receiver. And then, if anything from this world, or the next, or the one before us, comes through this room, it will simply do that. It's quite unearthly, actually, isn't it? And of course, all the time we're in here, we are being monitored, along with anybody or anything else that is in here, by these permanently fixed cameras up on the wall there. Right, follow me. There is one man who knows these corridors like no other. One man who laughs in the face of terror daily, all the while keeping the silverware at a professional polish. Rod, the caretaker.
So how long have you been here, Rod?
Off and on about 10 years.
Really? And how many strange and inexplicable things have you experienced?
Personally, only about 3.
Such as?
4. Strange feelings. Got a thing catching out the corner of your eye. You know when you see things move, you think, is that someone just gone by there?
And what about other people who have been here? Because I know you've had quite a few ghost hunters and mediums.
Oh yeah, they see a lot.
What sort of thing are they?
Well, they see everything from, we've had children, housekeepers, gardeners, Roman soldiers, Canadian soldiers, American soldiers, monks, dead monks, women, grey ladies.
The full list went on for some time, and if nothing else, it convinced me that we'd come to the right place. So, as the sun set and the full moon rose in the sky like a leering skull, I assembled my team.
We are now ready to go ghost busting and not be afraid. Tom here has a handheld infrared camera. I have a head-mounted infrared camera. I think we're ready. After me. Right. Is anybody there?
Observing our progress from the safety of the sitting room is Rebecca from the Man Lab and Nigel, our medical expert. Nigel will be measuring our fear levels, while Rebecca is standing by with a list of popular fear-busting techniques. We're wearing heart-monitoring watches that will go off every time our heart rate exceeds 75% of the maximum, meaning we're in the fear zone and must test out a calming technique.
Right, this way. I think if you take a right down the corridor, down here, this is a kitchen. There is something slightly spooky about a kitchen, especially an old one like this. These tiles have witnessed a lot of presumably quite terrible cooking over the centuries. Spam fritters, poor quality sausages, bits of children, that sort of thing.
I don't think he's going to cope with this very well.
What's up there? Stairs. Is that the library? Yes. I keep thinking if we're really quiet, we can sneak up on the ghosts. Right. And that's a good plan. Sorry, that was me.
So James is a bit more scared than Tom.
Sure, here we go. It's at 1:34.
74%.
Alarm is just
So 5 minutes in and he's already almost there.
My heart rate's just gone up.
James,
Hello.
you're over your heart rate, maximum heart rate. Please do some breathing exercises.
For example?
Place one hand on the abdomen and one on the chest. And then focus on
Trying to raise the lower hand.
and not the one on the chest when breathing.
I've absolutely no idea what she's on about.
It's good, it's working.
It's working.
Isn't it just because I've stood still and not run up the stairs? Probably.
For another 2 hours, we blunder about the castle, encountering nothing so much as a supernaturally bent spoon. But when we head to the Great Hall, a terrible surprise awaits.
So Tom's quite high. Tom's only 60%.
That's the Great Hall, yes. What's that? What? There's a noise way ahead there. Where?
It's the imagination that's the worst thing.
Hello.
That's just a doorway. I've heard something further through. Off you go. bit horrible.
Yeah. What was that?
Okay, did you hear that?
Yeah.
That was in there. What is in there? Dog! Fucking Nora!
Sabib.
Right, come on, be reasonable. That's just our alarm.
I want a heart rate check, please.
Oh, bloody hell. What was happening in there?
Don't know, but I definitely heard or saw something. I'm not quite sure what.
107 Tom, 122 James. There's something very odd going on in here, and that's not a joke. I don't like it.
I want you to stay in the Great Hall, please.
What's it? What's beep? I've gone above my limit.
You'll have to tell.
I want you to go back to the Great Hall and try to...
What the f*** was that?
What?
Something behind you.
Yeah, I did. I saw it. You're dead.
Okay, I want you to do a relaxation technique.
You got to be kidding. There's really weird stuff going on in there. Could you see that?
Breathe. Sorry, breathe. Okay, I want you to do it to knees. Calm down. Wait for some yoga.
Yoga? The restless dead are on our heels, woman.
Didn't you see that thing?
Yeah, what was it?
I don't have no idea. It was. I might have caught it on tape. I don't know, but it went straight behind you.
In fact, the identity of our mystery assailant was revealed after close inspection of the CCTV footage to be a startled bat. Still, at least we retained our scientific detachment.
Simply sit on the floor with your knees spread and bottoms of your feet either pressed together or wrapped around your legs. Your knees are slightly lifted off the ground. And breathe.
Tom's heart rate monitor went so far off the scale that he's actually managed to break the thing. 5 minutes of yoga reduces our fear rates by 15%. But as this is immediately counterbalanced by a 15% increase in embarrassment, we decide to move on to a new preemptive technique: flooding. Flooding involves exposing us to so much of the thing we're scared of that we'll be immune to anything the castle throws at us. We've enlisted Haywood Morse, one of the UK's most popular narrators of horror stories.
Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door, quoth the raven, nevermore.
The only problem is, my heart rate increases and continues to climb. Time to counteract this with an old fear-bashing favourite: Dutch courage.
The figure whipped round, stood for an instant at the side of the bed, raised its arms, and with a hoarse scream of, "You've got it!"
Suitably flooded with both scary stories and Cabernet, it's time to venture out once again into the blackness. We decide to return to the Great Hall, having disabled the alarms, and head for the Roman period Eastern Tower. This is where we thought we heard those strange noises just before our encounter with the bat.
Now this tower is actually quite spooky. I don't believe in anything like that, but it's actually quite atmospheric.
I don't like this picture. What the hell's going on there? The weird priest person, and it's sort of like an amateur Hieronymus Bosch with Oz Clarke in the middle of it.
It's quite spooky.
James, your heart rate's going up. I want you to start singing. So he's going to do that. Apparently soldiers used to sing that when they go into battle because it really calms you down. I think it releases endorphins.
I'm not scared.
I just heard a noise. What? I just heard something in here. Did you hear that?
Tom is so convinced that he heard something that we decide to forego our calming exercises and sit and listen.
Can you hear that? I can hear footsteps really clearly. What the hell is that?
Tom's gone up now.
James, what the was that? What was that noise? I don't know. Should we go down? Yeah, let's go down. Be careful down the stairs.
Tom was breathing really heavily.
Right.
James just went over.
Definitely had footsteps. I'm not hearing anything down here. There's something's going on up there.
Rebecca to Tom.
Shut up.
I just heard the footsteps again on these stairs.
On these ones?
It's Rod the caretaker.
Yes, our supernatural footsteps turned out to be a combination of a flag flapping on the tower and Rod making a cup of tea in a mysterious way. And so, after a long night of terror, our ordeal was finally over.
So, what have we learned? Well, firstly, that there are techniques for dealing with that inner sense of mounting panic, such as deep breathing or singing like the sailors of old. But perhaps more importantly, we've learned that this thing of which 40% of us claim to be very scared, i.e. ghosts, are actually just demons of our own minds, temporarily hosted by the darkness of a creaky old house. So it seems that Franklin D. Roosevelt was right when he said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Although, some later research conducted in the 1970s by Hannah and Barbera suggested we have nothing to fear but the caretaker. Ah, yes. Morganstar 89 writes to say, "I'm always losing screwdrivers and Allen keys. It drives me crackers. Can you help?" Well, as a matter of fact, Morganstar 89, yes, we can, because I have a similar problem at home, where I have this. It's known as the bowl of many things, and in it I keep all those things that have no acknowledged or accepted home within the home. For example, my flageolet, my Ninja Death Star, a spanner that's very important for adjusting cupboard doors in the kitchen, some keys, this spare padlock for the little shed outside, and indeed some Allen keys. However, we have recognised that there is an area of potential storage within every home that is greatly underutilised, and here it is. Welcome to the ManLab Ceiling Storage Solution, a mere magnetic folly that you can attach to any ceiling anywhere and that will keep very safe for you this spanner. See? On the ceiling. Up it goes. You know where it is forever. I had this little pair of nail clippers and I can never find them. I will be able to find them when they are up there. So, how do you create this simple yet extraordinary storage device? Well, a sheet of mild steel is covered with a uniform grid of 460 magnets, each capable of holding a kilogram. This way, the whole sheet is magnetised. We screw that to a board and then hang it from the ceiling. Now, if you're interested, those magnets up there are the neodymium type. They're extremely strong and they never lose their magnetism. You can get them from magnet websites on the internet. And it is worth remembering as well that the magnet has been a great contributor to civilization. Without it, we wouldn't have the magnetic resonance imaging scanner, the MRI scanner, and we wouldn't have the electric motor, and life would not be as good. Anyway, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that only half of our ceiling storage solution is magnetic. The other half is a mysterious black cloth. It is, in fact, a very sophisticated type of hook and eye material, or Velcro as you would know it. And take, for example, this hat, which I hardly ever wear. Well, that's got a home. Now, here's an interesting one. My ancient and beloved faded pale blue t-shirt, which I've had for the best part of 20 years. Now, obviously, the t-shirt would stick to the Velcro, but then it would become rather crumpled and we wouldn't want to spoil its appearance. So I've put it on a hanger. The hanger is, of course, made of mild steel, so that should stick to
the magnets, and there it is. How do you get these things down, I hear you cry, as one from the collective sofa of the nation? Well, what you do is you equip yourself with one of these grabbers. So, you need a hat, there is a hat. You need some Allen keys, well, there they are, simply grab them and bring them down. The only problem I can think of is, where do you store this? Anyway, whilst I think about that, let's see how Love Fungus are getting on. Earlier on, we auditioned 6 bands whose dreams of rock stardom expired 2 decades ago, crushed under the weight of proper jobs. We were in a position to give one of them a last stab at glory. There can only be one band that goes forwards, and that band is Love Fungus.
First time we've been in a room together for 20 years. So I think after that, anything can happen now.
So, Love Fungus convinced us, but next they would have to win over the crowd at High Voltage, one of the UK's biggest rock festivals. Neil Armstrong made a giant leap on behalf of all humanity when he set foot on the moon. But I think Love Fungus today are going to make a comparable one when they stride straight from a pub in the mid-90s to that, the main stage of the High Voltage Music Festival 2011. And without embracing any of the rubbish in between, none of the bent managers, dodgy contracts, difficult third albums, none of that stuff. They've just risen straight to the top like a bubble of fetid marsh gas.
Love Fungus.
After 20 years, I couldn't remember the songs and I couldn't remember the lyrics. I think all of us harboured ambitions of wanting to be being rock stars. I mean, everybody does when you're that age, really.
What's on about how many people are going to be at?
I don't know, what's the ticket
How many tickets is 30,000? 30,000 sold so far.
You're going to be sick.
No.
Sounds like you're going to be.
I think there was 12 people at our last gig, wasn't there?
More than that.
Maximum.
Since Love Fungus, jobs that I've done have involved mainly bar work.
There's a bit of excitement and a little bit of nerves. To be honest, I'm looking forward to seeing Brian May again.
Who's Brian May? What are you mean,
James May. Don't put that on.
Brian May.
Sadly, Brian May won't be at High Voltage this year, but no matter. As performers, Love Fungus enter the festival not through the public gates, but through the backstage entrance.
What a good day, guys.
Where are we going? Thanks very much.
Yeah, just to let you know, Love Fungus is coming over.
Do I regret Love Fungus not making it big every single day of my life?
I liked the songs actually, and you're now a national account manager in construction. Forgive me for saying this, but you can get a lot further from your dream of rock and roll stardom than looking after the accounts of large building projects.
As a national account manager, I'm all over the country. Would I rather be driving around on tour in a tour bus or a van? Yeah, absolutely. To play in front of a big crowd, it would be just the most incredible experience. It would be something that would be, you know, life-changing, I think.
Morning, chaps.
Hello. What did James say?
Very good. You all right?
Yes.
Yeah, very too well.
Excellent.
Are you nervous about it?
No, actually, at the minute, no. I'm not at the minute.
I must admit, I'm a little bit.
Yeah, I can't work out whether it's nerves or excitement.
This is incredible. This is sitting backstage at a festival is living the dream we had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Being a newly deified rock god means smashing your way through the rider in the dressing room before schmoozing with your rock contemporaries in as disaffected and hip a way as possible.
So, 20 years since your last gig?
Yeah.
21.
And somebody stopped the gig halfway through to ask if anyone had ordered a taxi.
Okay, so no tellies have gone in swimming pools yet, but at least the fungoids now have the chance to get some tips from the rock establishment.
No one's really prepared for anything, so you just go in and, you know, throw yourself to the sound. Sort of, yeah.
Never let the audience know you've made a mistake. Or never let the audience know that you're having a wobbler.
Just
just enjoy it. That's all you got to do. If you enjoy it and the crowd are with you, then great. And if they're not, just get off as quick as you can.
And the band aren't the only ones needing guidance. As the first punters arrive on site like the beginning of a patchouli-scented landslide, I'm starting to get a bit nervous too. I have to introduce the boys on stage, and if I can't get the crowd pumped up, I could ruin their day.
They're quite nervous, actually. They're very excitable, but they are nervous. It's not much of a contribution, but if I can just go out as if it's perfectly normal and say, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, it's Love Fungus, they'll sort of think, oh, right.
They need a big intro, though, I think.
How big?
Well, as heavy metal as you can make it.
Action-packed.
Action-packed, brief, loud, confident, foot on wedge.
Yeah.
The only bit I'm worried about, to be honest, is the foot on wedge.
I think if you're going with the foot up, it's the opposite hand up. You see what I'm saying?
You can't do that, can you? Because that's a bit country and western.
Yeah.
Can I do a bit of practice foot on wedge? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure we got something around here. Maybe we could get a minion just to get down.
Stick it on the
on their back.
Just then, Rory, Manlab's Callow youth, took the ill-advised decision to walk past where we were standing. But he won't mind this. We've been walking all over him for weeks.
Says walk out.
Yeah.
How's that?
Oh, yeah, nice.
Is that good?
For a first try, very good.
Thanks to the selfless Rory, I'm perfectly prepared for my big moment.
All good. You were great.
Thanks, Rory.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have the rest of the day off. Right, it's that way, I believe.
Okay.
To the 13 steps up to glory.
Here, then, at the foot of the stairway to rock heaven, is Love Fungus. The ghost of their ambition has been locked in an old guitar case under the stairs for 20 years, and now it's been opened.
Just calm. Look, it's just a gig. It's what you do.
Let's enjoy this. Come on.
No, you must. You must. I'm trying to think what to say to you because it doesn't. It's only rock and roll. It doesn't. Oh, thank you. How do I turn it on?
Are you ready, guys? Are we?
Yeah.
Want to come upstairs?
Oh, we got to go upstairs. Come on, that's upstairs.
Later, the stage will be host to Slash, Judas Priest, and Thin Lizzy. Total record sales 150 million.
It's only a gig. You just play musical instruments.
But for now, and for the only time in history, this arena belongs to a salesman, a national account manager, a graphic designer, a teaching assistant, and a nurse. Rock on.
Come on, go.
Scream for me, high voltage! This band split up in 1991 over musical differences and because someone had stolen the steering wheel from their van. They reformed 2 days ago and nobody noticed. But you're going to notice now. Give it up for Love Fungus!
Okay, ready, lads? Mesmerized
drums, let there be guitars. Oh, let there be rock.
The singer's quite funky, like quite Larry.
Yeah, it is. The glorious re-sprouting of the fungus is a message to all men stuck in daily drudgery across the nation. Take up thy guitar. You're never too old to dream.
Cheers, that was absolutely amazing. You guys are great. Enjoy the rest of your day and experience some fantastic bands that are here for you, okay? We're Love Fungus. Cheers.
Cheers, brilliant work. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Come on.
Sorry.
Cheers, sir. I'm very proud of them.
Bloody hell, man.
Good? Enjoy that.
You are good? Tell me.
That's terrific. My heart swelled with pride when I saw you out there. I was moved. I was. We had Hendrix at Monterey. We had The Who on the Isle of Wight, the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. But now we've had Love Fungus at the High Voltage Festival. And in 30 years' time, people who weren't here will claim that they were. Let us not forget that Love Fungus are not merely some reunited happy band of brothers. They, and thousands of bands before them, actually changed the course of musical history. Because if it hadn't been for the invention of the electric guitar, the ukulele craze that swept America in the 1940s would have continued unabated to this day. And now your MP3 player would be filled not with rock music, but with the happy sounds of Hawaiian ukulele bands. Imagine that. Goodbye.